When was the last time you checked the rear wheel for perfect alignment? How did you do that? Did you use a string line, some kind of alignment tool? Did you measure the axle block position with vernier calipers? And then, post-measurement, how did you mark the swing arm? With a scribe, a felt pen, a center punch, nail varnish? What did you use? Lastly, are all the marks even still there? When was the last time you checked? It doesn't hurt at this time of year, as you're doing your pre-season prep, to go through the process again. And do so with no rushing. That's going to give you an opportunity where all is quiet around you in the garage, and you can get the alignment absolutely perfect. There is no exception. Both wheels must be perfectly aligned. So, you're going to have to choose a way to do it and then stick to it for the entire year so you create consistency. 2 cones on a rod is quick, but is it as precise as measuring with vernier calipers? So what is going to be your personal standard of excellence? Get it close or get it perfect? Racing requires perfection, especially if you're trying to win. So all the prep work now in making the rear wheel alignment accurate is absolutely critical. Marking the swing arm is perhaps the most important thing out of all of this. The more accurate the marks on the swing arm as a starting point, the more you can ensure the rear wheel is perfectly straight. Scribing a mark is by far the best method, as the line is very thin. A center punch mark is actually wider, and a felt pen line is wider again. I know you may think that sounds ridiculous, but think about it. Let's look at it in dollars. If it cost you 1 chain per season and 1 additional rear sprocket mid-season, rather than 1 chain and 2 sprockets, is that few minutes worth it to you? With single-sided swing arms, obviously there's no alignment issue per se, but you do need to know where you are in the arc of the drum to calculate rear ride height and total shock length correctly. Therefore, you do need to mark where the alignment is in regards to the drum. That way you'll know if you're going forwards or backwards, what's happening to the geometry in the back of the bike. Not only that, but bear in mind that the chain will stretch each weekend, depending on what dollar amount you paid for the chain. You will be aligning the wheel very frequently. Now, does this level of detail on the swing arm marking process make sense? Trust me, it's even more critical with a single-sided swing arm. Yeah, think about that for a minute. Now, you want to look very closely at the chain next. A cold garage is a good thing in this instance, as many of the links have a tendency to bind, and they will show that very clearly. So what does binding mean? Look at how the links are at different angles to each other rather than perfectly aligned. So, is it worth it to you to spend a while cleaning that chain with something like kerosene to free up all the links? Is it actually better to replace it with a higher quality chain, or are you willing to make do with what you have? Important question, really. You really need to figure out what you've got and whether an expense is warranted. So, let's look at the chain a little more closely. Are the bushings loose? Do they rattle? Grab the chain on the rear sprocket, somewhere between, if the sprocket is a clock face, 2 and 4 o'clock, Can you pull the chain away from the actual sprocket? Is there a gap there? Can you see the teeth? Lastly, grab the chain under the swing arm. How much side-to-side free play or yaw does it have? Is it several inches? Well, given all of this evaluation, if it fails on most of these, the chain's done. Throw it away, replace it, and buy a good quality chain. Also, when you're doing that, count the number of links in the chain you're going to remove and make sure you buy something either exactly the same length or just a little bit longer. In visually checking the sprockets, you don't have to pull the chain off or remove the wheel. But if you want to take a very close look at them, you should take the rear wheel off. Look at the tips of the teeth for lateral wear. Are the tips of the teeth shaved off on one side, giving a diagonal face? If so, that tells you the rear wheel is pointed in a certain direction. So your alignment is far from correct. Oops. Time to start over. Next, check the depth of the teeth. Has that increased? Teeth that are worn will also create different shapes, from needles to small nubs. So again, check the sprocket carefully, visually. In fact, are you actually missing any teeth? Sounds stupid, but if you're not really looking for that, you might not pay attention. So steel sprockets are durable to a point, but clearly aluminum sprockets wear very quickly when something is out of sync. You should be checking aluminum sprockets every time you change the rear wheel. No excuses. Make sure you check. If you're going to replace the chain and sprockets for the new season, consider these things. Are your lap times faster than they were at the start of last year? Are you going to go faster again this year? Should you actually evaluate gearing prior to buying the same stuff as just a default purchase? Did you get a more powerful engine this year? That may require much different gearing immediately. So, contemplate what you need, then create a plan for purchase. When you've created that purchase plan, you need to sit back and look at geometry changes that will occur if you change gearing. And then you need another plan for testing, so that when you go out, you ensure the shock length is right, not just close enough, and that mechanical or edge grip is as good as you can get it initially, for then verifying refinement on track.